Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest in our series of lockdown video interviews. Today I'm joined by Dr Kimberley Hockings, who's a researcher and senior lecturer in conservation science here at Exeter. Kim's research focuses on human-wildlife coexistence with particular interest in great apes. She works extensively in West Africa with local communities to find solutions that protect wildlife while supporting local farmers and villagers. Some of the most significant work is taking place in the Cantonese National Park in Guinea-Bissau, which is home to 28,000 people, but also 1,000 critically endangered chimpanzees who live in very close proximity to one another. So welcome, Kim. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Could you share a little bit about the type of work that you do in the Cantonese National Park?
Yeah, sure. So I'm primarily interested in the ways that in which great apes, notably the Western Chimpanzee, are able to adapt to living alongside people, so in these shared landscapes. And they exhibit quite interesting behavioural adaptations to doing so. So, for example, they regularly go into people's gardens and agricultural areas to feed on their crops. They're sharing space with people in quite interesting ways. They're utilising the same parts of the landscape. And they sometimes have surprise encounters and potentially aggressive interactions with people. So I'm really interested in the sustainability of these types of interactions. Of course, they're coming into close contact with people on a daily basis, and this does bring some problems. We're becoming increasingly aware of the disease risk of sharing space and such close contact, and this is a growing area of our research. And something that a lot of my future students are going to be looking at.
Okay, cool. And what are some of the solutions you've been able to develop during your research in Cantonese?
Yeah, so I think something that's not unique to our project, but that's certainly a strength of our project, is that we collaborate with the local communities, key members of the local community, different groups, so women's groups, youth groups, as well as respecting some of the traditional setups, so working with the regulator, which is the king of the area. But alongside that, we're also collaborating with a lot of the governmental institutions that can affect policy change, such as EBAP, the Institute for Biodiversity and Protected Areas. And our position where we're collaborating at a very local level and also a national level allows us, I think, we've got a lot of strength in being able to change policy, for example, development of action plans, but also making sure that any of our conservation strategies really fit with what might work with local communities. When you have this situation with 28,000 people and, like you said, 1,000 chimpanzees and various other wildlife species, we've just seen elephants in the north of the national park, we've got buffalo, we've got black and white colobus, red colobus. I mean, it's an amazing biodiversity there. And you really, really need to consider local people's needs.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think our project really, really tries to do. So we're marrying biodiversity conservation with development. And I would say that one of the most important conservation actions that we currently do is working with local park guards alongside EBAP. Yeah. So we're developing a biodiversity monitoring program, so they're able to monitor wildlife abundance over time, but also the health of various species within these different forest fragments across the national park.
Yeah.
So that's really important. And these are local guards. They're not from areas outside of Cantonese. They're from Cantonese themselves, from the villages. So we don't have this problem of outsiders coming in and trying to enforce the law. They are part of the local communities, and that's really important. And that is something that we need to really fight to keep going, especially under very difficult circumstances like this new coronavirus outbreak. And because, of course, we can't go to Guinea-Bissau, we can't travel.
No, of course.
Research is restricted. So,
of course. I mean, as you say, there have been coronavirus cases in Guinea-Bissau, not yet, as far as we're aware, in the park.
No confirmed cases yet.
How is that impacting the rural communities and the research?
Yeah, so of course it's impacting local communities. So they're not allowed to travel, so they've had the road networks completely blocked off. It's also cashew farming season, which is their main cash crop.
Right.
So they've gone from a situation where cashew was quite profitable to having very, very low value. They can't sell it. So, I mean, at the moment, people are starting to panic. They are seeing that we're starting to come into the kind of resource scarce period where people would rely on the money from cashew to buy foods such as rice. And they're panicking. They don't have, there's the real possibility of starvation in the area. And of course, people are quite scared because they're seeing very rich Western countries basically collapsing under this coronavirus outbreak. And so they're wondering, we don't have healthcare, the same level of healthcare as people do in the West. What's going to happen to us?
Yeah, I mean, it's really serious. I mean, if and when it reaches the park, I mean, what are the potential implications for the residents, both the human and wildlife populations?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to imagine a situation where people are under effective lockdown just staying in their houses. I mean, we've seen some of the implications of trying to do that in poverty-stricken areas in other parts of the world. I should say Guinea-Bissau are one of the poorest nations in the world, with most people live under $1 a day. So yeah, I mean, it has huge implications for people. Like in Europe and other countries, we're seeing a lot of fake news being spread. So that's certainly a concern. And I would say to really understand how to kind of tackle these types of diseases, we need to have a really good understanding of how these kind of scaremongering tactics and fake news really impact local people's perceptions of a disease and their willingness to kind of accept scientific advice on how to reduce the spread. And that's really important when coming up with disease mitigation strategies.
Okay.
In terms of the wildlife, so recent research has shown that chimpanzees and other African primates are likely to suffer the same as humans do. So yeah, they certainly can get coronavirus. And we don't know the exact effect on chimpanzees, but it could be absolutely devastating. So we think Cantonese is probably got the highest density of chimpanzees in Guinea-Bissau. Right. There are only around 50,000 chimpanzees in the whole of West Africa, which is not many when you think the number of countries they cover and these small fragments. And so it really does have the potential to devastate these populations, especially those living alongside people like in Canada.
Yeah, wow. Now, you said you work closely with these communities and you're, helping to support them given some of their lack of resources. What are some of the things you're trying to do at the moment?
So what we're trying to do is come up with ways so that the park guards can continue to monitor biodiversity in the different forest fragments during this epidemic. So like you said, there have been no reported cases of coronavirus in Cantonese yet. So it's really important for us to continue collecting data now, also during the potential outbreak, the likely outbreak, and then post-outbreak, to see how wildlife numbers change over that period. So I think the park guards are absolutely key to information gathering and understanding how this virus impacts the wildlife populations and also people. And so we developed a protocol with EBAP to allow park guards to continue this safely. And what we really need now is to purchase protective equipment for the guards and to make sure they know how to use these properly to reduce the effects that they're spreading coronavirus to any of the wildlife, but also they're protecting themselves from any potential sources. Because what we're seeing in many other parts of the world is an increase in hunting as poverty-stricken people have no other alternatives but to turn to kind of forest meat products to sustain themselves. So I think it's really important to keep the monitoring going, but it needs to be done in a very safe way. And so we're currently looking for funds to purchase some of this protective equipment for the guards and also within key stations within the villages.
Excellent. I mean, you mentioned funding there. Is there any way that anyone else can get involved to help these communities?
Yeah, so I mean, Really, we're not asking, we don't need that much money. So we're probably after about £5,000. And what this would allow us to do is to provide really simple products like these tip-tap hand washing stations, which people can use without touching anything, which is absolutely crucial when you're thinking about a disease like coronavirus. Simple things like soap, so for hand washing, but also for washing clothes every day after patrols, bleach, and alcohol, so the guards can sanitize their boots and other items like smartphones. And also we would like to kind of ride on the back of some of the research that's been done in East Africa, where people have found that making these fabric masks are actually quite effective in stopping the transmission of coronavirus from an infected person to others. So yeah, I mean, that's really simple items that we're looking for. We have the infrastructure set up, so we've got our collaborators and partners, EBAP and another health NGO, Nadel, who are already there. And so they're just basically on hold now until we find this money, and they're able to set up all these different stations and provide the products that the local guards and other community members will need.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing some insights into your research today, Kim. And we will put links to all the information that you talked about in the details of this video. I hope everyone's enjoyed listening to us today, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Cheers.